By the end of each day that we were shooting that episode, the entire crew applauded her.
Welcome back to the Blerd Girl podcast. I'm Karama Horn, aka the Blerd Girl, and if you are a fan of the Changeling horror series on Apple TV Plus, then this is the episode for you. I'm going to be talking to the executive producer and the author of the original book that the series was based on, Victor Lavalle. Victor Lavalle is the author of 8 works of fiction, including The Ballad of Black Tom and the comic books Destroyer and Eve. He's been the recipient of numerous awards, including a World Fantasy Award, an American Book Award, and a Guggenheim Fellowship. His most recent novel, Lone Women, is a national bestseller. His novel, The Changeling, has been adapted for television for Apple TV Plus, and the first season's finale just dropped last week. Now, we will get a little bit spoilery in this episode when it comes to The Changeling. So if you have not seen the series or read the book, you may want to do one of those and then come back. Up next, my conversation with Victor Lavalle. It was like a year ago that we did Pop Paranormal, or you came on the Pop Paranormal horror show to talk about Candyman.
That's right. That was a lot of fun.
It was. What was great about our conversation back then was you were just giving us a little inkling as to what we were going to get with The Changeling.
That's right.
And here we are. All of the episodes have aired, and I have so many questions. But so first, congrats on the series, The Changeling, being brought to Apple TV.
Thank you.
And also congrats on the writer's strike being over,
yes.
So we could actually have this conversation.
That's right. That's right. I'm thrilled for both things. You know, one is definitely completely my own selfish happiness, and the other is a benefit to, forget even just all the writers now, but the writers over the next few years who are coming into the game. You know,
we're definitely going to touch on your comic books. We're also going to touch, I have so many questions about the season finale of The Changeling.
Yes.
But I'm actually going to start with how you are right now at this moment. What are you reading? What are you doing? What are you watching?
Well, you know, so I brought a little stack of books so I wouldn't forget anything. The first one is The Black Girl Survives in This One. It's
yes.
a wonderful short story anthology I'm reading to Blurb. And I'm loving it. It's a lot of fun. It'll be, I know Jordan Peele just released his Black Horror Anthology, which I'm excited to read. And this is also on the horizon. I really want to urge people. Then the second thing I'm reading is McSweeney's has put out their latest issue. It's horror stories.
Ooh.
And it comes like, it's as always with them.
Gorgeous.
It's beautiful on the inside. So it comes in this slipcase, right? And then it pulls out to the second slipcase. So it's like the person is slowly peeling off their skin.
Oh my God.
And then the last layer is bone.
Oh, that's crazy. Who did this art? This is stunning.
And then inside of all of that is that old school looking.
Oh,
with
that's
some amazing art.
They need to win an award for packaging.
I'm telling you, they've done over the years like just an astounding level of work with like just their design, you know, depending on the issue and all the rest. But this one is, to my mind, like that was one of the best things I ever saw, you know. And it's got a ton of great writers in it, and edited by a writer named Brian Evanson, who's amazing. Anyway, so that's the other thing I'm reading. And then the last thing I'm reading in a much more serious tone is When Crack Was King.
Oh, yes.
By Donovan X. Ramsey. I'm really enjoying it. And it's also doubling as a little bit of research.
For another book.
For the next book.
That might be taking place, that means in the 80s, maybe?
Yes, undoubtedly. I mean, that's the decade I know, and feel like maybe a little more, a different perspective on the crack era with this much time passed, and finding a way to tell a horror story in that era is not difficult.
No, not at all. I mean, I could even see it now. Someone like tripping on crack, and then all of a sudden accidentally opening up a portal to another thing and then they can see stuff. Like, it's right there waiting.
It's right there. It's right there.
And if anybody can make it absolutely like creepy and scary, it's going to be you. I can't
Well, I
wait.
appreciate that.
And I also, you just mentioned your accolades about the fact that the strike is over. Can you, in layman's terms, quickly kind of recap why this is so groundbreaking?
For sure. So some of them, and I would say the caveat is I'm not a WGA captain or anything like that. So this is just my foot soldier level understanding, but still my excitement is real. The first thing is that there were protections against AI being used as either source material for things that a writer might then work on, or AI being used after a writer has turned in source material to to do the edits and all the rest.
Got it.
And the reason that this is big is because obviously whenever and wherever corporations are trying to use AI to remove the human component, much like at our local Target, more than half the registers are now just automated registers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that. That's essentially it. They just would like to make all of screenwriting automated registers, and this deal makes it so that they can't do that, at least for the next 3 years. The contracts always last for 3 years.
Okay.
The second thing is that they have got in place things like room minimums, which means that depending on how long your show is going to be, if it's 6 episodes, there have to be a minimum of 3 writers working on it.
Human writers.
Human writers. If it's 7 to 12, I think it has to be 5 writers, and it builds a little bit more from there. And the thing that's important about that is that the studios, what they were doing was shrinking the size of the rooms, and it seemed clear what they were really shooting for was essentially one writer writing everything and then going off and making it, which is great for a very small handful of writers who do want that level of control. But what it would do is it essentially makes it so that no junior writers get hired, and therefore they do not learn how to become showrunners themselves.
Yeah, or be in a writer's room. Yeah, it's giving Tyler Perry. It's giving.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. And sometimes when I read the stories about the kind of turnover in his studios, I mean, he makes what he makes and people are enjoying it and all that kind of stuff. God bless all that. But for the writers and the actors and the crew, I imagine it is a meat grinder of a process. And so the idea that there might be protections against that seems good to me.
Yeah, me too. And I don't think a lot of people don't really understand how many people it takes to create a series. But I definitely think that when those writers' rooms started shrinking, we started seeing crazy shows, like shows that would have amazing first seasons. The second season, we're like, what happened? Oh, there's 2 people writing.
There was only 2 people. And then they had to rewrite it based on notes and all. And there was no room or space for it to run like a machine where 2 of them would be rewriting, 2 of them would be coming up with new ideas, and then another one would be on set filming the next episode. That's how you would make a thing feel organic.
I'm glad I asked you because I've been looking for more of a lay person that is on the inside to explain it, because I've been talking to a lot of people who are like captains and they have very specific union language they use, but those of us on the outside don't always get the the union speak. So
I mean, and there's plenty more in there, but those were 2 things, like room size and pushback against AI struck me as 2 that I understood. And because relatively speaking, I'm new to the TV writing side as well. It's great to be back working, and also, just like across labor movements across the country this year in particular, if corporations have been pushing us back in the sand all the way to the ocean for a very long time, it can feel like a major victory to just take 2 or 3 steps out of the ocean.
Yeah.
So that's what it feels like.
And that is commendable. And also, I am very happy, whether or not it's 3 years or not, you got it. And that's enough time for us to get another season of Changeling and whatever it is you're writing. So yes.
From your lips to Apple's ears. Yes.
Let's talk comics for a minute. I, as you know, am a huge fan of the Destroyer, your Frankenstein comic, and I want more. But I know your plate is very full.
Well, I mean, that's interesting because it is. I mean, wherever it ends up, Destroyer is also in the movie process. We have a wonderful, wonderful writer who's working on that, who's not me. She's super talented. When we get to the point where it exists as a movie, it will be its own wonderful thing that is like the comic, but also different from the comic, you know? Because honestly, the comic, you have no budget.
And you can do whatever you want.
And you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And apparently, you can't do that with a movie.
I've heard.
Yes.
But if with enough of a budget, we get some special effects in there, because I can't wait to see the tech that was also in your comic. And then you got to do an X-Men comic.
I did.
You did Sabretooth. Was that kind of like a little bit of a dream come true? You said you liked the 80s. X-Men was huge in the 80s.
It was, and I also liked. I appreciated when I got the job. I said like the thing I'm not going to try to do is redeem Sabretooth or make him any kind of like anti-hero. And as long as you're okay with that, then I want to do this very much. And no one was arguing for like good Sabretooth, which I appreciated. And then the fact that it allowed me to turn it into a conversation about prison reform or the evils of prison was just the icing on that cake. I would have written it even if they didn't let me do that, but the fact that they allowed it to, like, that they didn't fight me on that, and in fact saw the ways that was a better story, because it was surprising that you could use really the worst mutant out there to talk about the idea that there's still injustice, even for the worst person, when they're treated like this, was a real joy.
X-Men has always asked those questions. Depending on the writer, it wasn't always, that good. But it has always asked those questions, good versus evil, and what the shades of evil in the good and the shades of good in the evil. That's always been around. But I also think it's wonderful that they let you do what you do, which is you always have an element of obviously horror, but also social justice, as well as or New York or history. You always have those elements in your work, and I think that's amazing that they allowed you to bring you to that comic, because as somebody who has written for Marvel, they don't always let you do that.
No.
So
well, I will say in a way, the thing that I think helped me was that it was Sabretooth.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not pulling that off if they
Captain
assigned me
America.
the Wolverine comic or Captain America or Black Panther even, right? Like, those are more, you got to keep those on a certain shelf, a high shelf, because those are the premier folks. But Sabretooth is a little like, oh, do we own that still? Yeah, okay, go ahead. And I got to sneak in there.
Awesome.
And so it was a gift in that way.
Yeah, and no, you're absolutely right, because and I've said this before, the only thing that I've ever wanted to do with Wakanda is give everybody a last name. That's all I've wanted. That's all I wanted.
That's amazing.
Because Africans have 7 names and these people don't. But that's just, what
they
are you
won't
going to do?
I'm sure, because then it's like, well, who decides the names? And
I was happy though there was a hint of that in Wakanda Forever, the film, where he started, Coogler started calling people like daughter of Yah. So,
yes.
And this is nothing against Marvel. I'm just saying that this is what happens when you're playing in somebody else's sandbox. You have to play by their rules. Now, Eve is a force. We just talked about putting social justice into Sabretooth. This was, environmental justice, cloning, the concepts, good or evil, leaning on a generation of children to come up with answers. And that's not even the main story. Those are just like those themes that are in it. So if you wouldn't mind, please, for those who don't know, please share the sort of the elevator pitch of Eve.
Sure. Eve is the story of a 12-year-old girl who thinks that she is living in an island paradise with her scientist father, but is very quickly woken up by a robotic teddy bear who explains that the world is actually ravaged by climate change, and she has been living in a stasis in a floating in stasis, and she has been awoken now because it is her job to travel across a ruined United States with this robotic bear named Wexler to get the seeds that are hidden in a seed vault on the other side of the country, and essentially reseed the world so that it can all grow again. But there's even deeper aspects of her own story and her own history that she isn't aware of when she is sent on this mission by her father, who's in a space station floating above the planet.
Wexler is no joke. Wexler is the weaponized teddy bear that I wish I had growing up.
Like the only character I loved nearly as much as Eve is Wexler.
Because he's an AI with an attitude too. It's
yes.
Just...
Well, so that was my way of also sneaking in. I mean, it begins in New York also, but like sneaking in Queens, because when I was pitching it, I said he's just Archie Bunker in a
weaponized
robot.
teddy bear.
That's right. That's right. And they were like, that's perfect. We haven't had that version before.
Eve is also being adapted.
Yes.
Congrats.
Thank you.
This is why we had to get this writer's strike done, because you have things in the works.
There's things in the works. Yes. That one is for TV. And that one is, again, not me. Two wonderful, wonderful women are super talented writers are adapting that. And my hope is that now that the strike is over, that can kick into gear again.
Is it difficult handing off your work, handing off your child to somebody else to write about, handing off these stories?
Well, I'll say two things. The first thing is it's not that difficult because it's not in my contract. So I didn't actually have a say over it. But the great joy, at least in the case of those two properties, is the people who are adapting them. I got to speak to them. I got to, if not know them, at least get some sense of each of them. And I have so much faith in them. I feel nothing but excited for their versions of these stories.
Oh, that's awesome. I really want to talk to you about how you were part of the writing process for the Changeling adaptation. But we are going to take a quick break. But I cannot wait to delve into this show with you.
The Upside Down, Candyman, Michael Myers.
Our culture is obsessed with all things paranormal and horror. We love these films and TV shows.
And we got a lot to say about them.
This is Pop Paranormal from Travel Channel. We're a podcast that dives deep into the best horror movies and TV shows ever. I'm Karama Horn, a.k.a. the Blerd Girl. I'm a writer and critic parked at the intersection of geekdom and diversity.
And then there's me, Chuck Collins, a comic book artist and a horror connoisseur. We're the geekiest couple you've ever met. And on Pop Paranormal, we gonna get into it. From iconic TV shows like The Twilight Zone
to cult classics you may have missed.
I've looked at movies before and said, why is this scary?
We break down the themes and inside stories that inspired each show or movie.
We give you our hot takes, cold takes, and some real talk.
Plus, we invite on experts, superfans, and even the Hollywood insiders who brought these shows to life.
I grew up, as a kid in the 80s, pre-internet, believing in urban legends.
From The Shining to Nope, we take you from the scary screen to behind the scenes of the most talked about horror movies and shows. So grab that popcorn
and prepare to get scared and schooled.
Listen to Pop Paranormal from Travel Channel, wherever you get your podcasts.
See you on the other side.
Welcome back to the Blerd Girl podcast, folks. I'm Karama Horn, a.k.a. the Blerd Girl, and I'm talking to Victor Lavalle. And I'm so excited to talk to you now, finally, about the Changeling. I had to wait through watching all the episodes, and I had to wait through the writer's strike. But I'm so glad to have you on the show to talk about this. Now, before the break, I had mentioned that two of your other properties, Destroyer comic book, as well as Eve, another graphic novel series, are both being adapted, and you are not doing the adaptation to screen. But in the case of the Changeling, not only was I thrilled when I got my screeners to see that you were not only part of the writing process, but an executive producer and a narrator. You're the first voice we hear.
That's true. Yes.
How did you make that happen? Because I know a lot of writers who wish they could have that much control over their adaptations.
Yes. Well, this is where I have to give just endless amounts of credit to the showrunner and creator, Kelly Marcel. And the reason that I have as big a part as I do is because of Kelly. So just very briefly, the book came out in 2017, and it was optioned in 2017 by the producers are Anna Perna. And then one producer in particular, a woman named Ali Krug, she got the book to Kelly Marcel, who previous to this had written. She wrote I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but the movie about the making of Mary Poppins with Tom Hanks and Emma Thompson. And she'd done some other things as well. More recently, she's written all the Venom movies, and so she's got a wide range of interests. But she fell in love with the book. And as soon as she signed on to adapt it, the first thing she did after she signed on was fly from LA to New York. And she took me out to lunch.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we went to lunch for about 2-3 hours. And what she said at the start of that was, "This is not my show. This is our show. And I want this to be ours." And as the more we talked, the more I understood she really meant that.
And I don't think people understand how rare that is in Hollywood.
So
It
rare.
is incredibly rare for that to happen.
If you ever hear any interviews with pretty much anybody who's involved with the show, all of us just sing the praises of Kelly up and down, right? And one of the things that I learned from her that was so good to see was one of the ways that she proved how much of a captain she was is that she never acted like she had to drive the ship alone. Everybody could have input. Things changed based on what Lakeith and Clark, the two leads, wanted or thought at different times. What the costume designer and the set designer, if they had great ideas, she took them. Same with me. As time went by, I understood like nothing shows more confidence than that willingness to let everybody enjoy some power, especially when you know, in the end, you're the one who's saying yes or no. So there's no need to prove that to people or to hold that over people. And as a result, everybody just gives you their best.
It's like leading from the middle.
That's right.
I love that concept because it's sort of that way you always know what's going on, but you're not so far away from the process and the real work that there's a disconnect. So that's amazing. And it also makes this is, I mean, the story is traumatic. So you need that ensemble feel, you know.
Yes. And also, I mean, that was in a way, that was also maybe why she fell in love with the story. And what we bonded over too was the idea that at the heart of this is two themes: parenting and how hard it can be to parent, but also how hard it can be to separate yourself from the traumatic stories that made you, right? Like if you grew up with some hardship, you grew up with a hard thing, can you find a way to not let that determine your whole path in life? How do you put aside those traumas? How do you let go of the things that you thought had destroyed you ever since you were young, you know? And when she and I talked at that lunch, she had a lot of similar work that she had gone through. And I think that was what really, really bonded us. And then, so from 2017 till when it premiered in 2023, lots of people came on board, but from the beginning, it was really me and her. So she'd pitch it to different channels and she'd call me up afterwards. She'd be like, "This is how it went. This is what they asked. This is what they didn't ask. This is what they said." As once we finally sold it, she would write the scripts. She wrote all the scripts, but she would send each draft to me, ask me for notes. What should change? What should this? I'd send it back. She'd do another pass. We'd talk it through. And so in that way, it was the book plus all this other stuff she wanted to add, particularly about Emma's journey.
Yes.
thing.
It's been a few years since I've read the book, but I definitely felt the book was Apollo's perspective. And when did you decide that you were going to do the narration? Was that from jump?
The way that went was originally Kelly had someone else in mind. Like Emma Thompson was the one who was maybe going to do it.
Oh, interesting.
Like that's who Kelly was thinking. Only because, number one, they had worked on that Mary Poppins movie, so they knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
But also, she's got such a great, like, let me tell you a story kind of voice. But for various reasons, it couldn't work out. And then the question was, well, because Kelly definitely wanted a narrator. She wants the story to feel like you're being told a tale, as opposed, which is in part meant to help move from the grounded to the fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sense of like, oh, all along someone's been telling me this story, you know. But then we were batting around like, who could it be? And, you know, all kinds of amazing names are bounced around. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. But she had been listening. She'd read the book more than once, certainly. But at least one of those times she'd listened to it on audiobook. And I had done it.
Yep.
I did the audiobook. And so what she said was, well, two things. What she said first was like, I loved having your voice be the one that told me the tale. So I think I want to do that. I want you to be the one telling us the story. And then her second point was, you're so much cheaper than everyone that we are going to ask for the level that I want to be at.
And,
so it was
and
that
Apple should not have a problem with that.
That's right. And Apple will only be glad to save one line of budget. So it was really those two things. And I had a blast doing it. And what I also enjoyed is like as the season goes on, the narration kind of pulls back because you're really getting to know the people better, and you don't need it quite as much, right? Like you're in the tale now.
Yes. But I also think this goes back to the other reason why I'm so glad we got two sides of the story, because it's really funny. There was another critic that was complaining about the unreliable narration, and I'm like, that's actually a device, you know. And you need the narrator back to ground us, because now I don't know who I'm supposed to believe.
That's right.
Know? And I love the nonlinear storytelling, which has to be written well in order to follow it. And just to let listeners and watchers know, we are about to spoil a few things. So if you haven't watched it, please take a moment. Pause this, go watch the entire thing, and then come back. And then come back, give it 5 stars, and then come back and watch this, and then we can discuss. Because I read the book, I knew it was coming, but I didn't tell my boyfriend anything. And we were watching it, and I remember saying after episode 2, I'm like, I wonder where they're gonna do it. And I figured, maybe they'll do it episode 5. Maybe they'll draw this out, and the big thing won't happen till the season finale. I don't know. And then episode 3, you threw everybody right off a cliff.
That's right.
And it's so funny because I had to watch the screeners before because I had to write my review. So he watched it on his own. And I can tell you the moment he yelled, I knew what was happening. I was like, yep, it just happened.
Yes.
Does that make you giggle sometimes watching people's reaction?
Well, you know, one of the joys, like when the book came out, I would see reviews. It was just like, I was just enjoying this story. And then I got to that scene and I knew what scene it was. And then here too, it like one of the things that's been interesting about like, particularly like review coverage, right? Like 3 is such a boom, like a blockbuster kind of thing that I really felt like some folks, the show is designed to sort of like spool out the story slowly.
Yes, it slows down after that. Yes.
Yeah, and it's supposed to make you feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know. I don't have answers right away, and that's not an accident. That's actually the point. It's supposed to force you to pay even closer attention to like all the things that people are saying or doing. You know, but I would say not everybody's used to watching TV like that anymore.
We're so used to binging that when something is forced to be week to week, that people somehow lose momentum because we are programmed now to Netflix and chill.
Yes.
So
really, it was designed for you to sort of like live in it like a tale. And also, like you say, it's the kind of thing that I think in rewatches people will realize, like, oh,
It was there.
all there.
Yeah.
Everything was there.
Everything was
Yes.
there. And the what was it like the first time you saw the effects for Apollo's father? Like in the dream?
They were terrible. Because, that's the fun part of being behind the curtain of it all, is seeing the different versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's the wrong blue. Oh, the face, it looks like it's made out of cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all these various things. So when, like, it wasn't until almost the air date of the pilot that I saw the blue face and then the blue smoke coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And that's when I was just like, oh, okay. And similarly, the boat scene in the beginning, it was just like a stick figure.
Yeah.
All
because they had to show you sort of like in the animatic until they could get the whole thing animated. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's hard to visualize if you're not, it's like,
that's right.
Because it's like finger puppets until it's finished.
Well, and speaking of even that, when Cal does the puppet show and the witch's face moves, like on the day of, it was just a puppet with 3 green dots on it, and everybody has to act like it's moving. It's moving. And to Lakeith's undying credit, he really makes you believe he just saw that thing move. And then when I finally saw it with the effect in, I was like, oh, that's creepy. Nice. This team is good. You're
like, I'm no longer worried. Kindergarten. Now, it's funny because in the book, it's very clear they're trolls. Now, they haven't called trolls in the show yet, but I'm going to go by what the book says. It's not really a spoiler. But the kindergarten is not a troll, right? Kindergarten is a human being.
He's an internet troll.
I got it.
Yeah.
So he
internet
has been
trolls
possessed. And real trolls
work for trolls.
Got it. They have their minions, like
right.
vampires have their familiars.
That's right. And so one of the things that I hope we'll get the chance to explore that was in the book, but even more, I think there'll be time in the show, is that sense of like a deal was made 150 years ago, much like you might say a deal was made when the United States was founded, about who would be used as who would be ground down in order to make this civilization work. And in return, the group of people who made that deal benefited more than the pharaohs.
The episode where Emma goes underground in New York and finds that whole, you saw me on
Wheels
Twitter. I was like,
yes.
And it's too funny because my boyfriend said the same thing. He's like, we're moving. The moment he said, I'm going to find this waterfall and we are going.
Yes.
I also love how he spoke in rhyme. I would love a spinoff of that group of people.
That whole community,
I would
for
love
sure.
I don't care if it's a comic book. I don't care if it's an animated short. I don't care. One question that I had for you, and if you can't answer, I completely understand. The woman that Emma meets in Brazil that does tie the string around her wrist, is she real or is she an apparition? Is she a ghost?
As far as I'm concerned, although like I'm a big fan of once a thing exists, everybody makes their own version of that story.
Okay.
But for me, and I think, presuming if we get a season 2 to finish telling the story, she's there, but the ways that I think a different question would be, was it really an accident?
Was it an accident? Right. Yeah. Or was she waiting?
Yeah.
When did this portal?
Emma called?
Was she called? Yeah. Because we don't know. Also, maybe something in her traumatic past linked her to this person.
My favorite theory that I'm not going to say yes or no or whatever, but so far my favorite theory is that woman is Lillian, Apollo's mom, who has time traveled here. And I just love it. I'm like, sure. That sounds amazing. That sounds, and she had to do that to get the wheel rolling with Apollo.
Oh, I love that.
I thought it was beautiful.
Speaking of Lillian, can we give Adina Porter her things?
Please.
Can we give her things?
Please.
Can we get, I mean, that one episode, can we get that into the Emmys as soon as possible?
Can I tell you, like, that episode, what was so beautiful was by the end of each day that we were shooting that episode, the entire crew applauded her. Like when we were done for the day, we said we're wrapped for the day. Everybody, makeup, grip, cinematographer, director, me and Kelly, we just applauded for her as she just left. I think she's long past due for her
Yes,
Emmy, for her
absolutely.
everything. But when Kelly said, like, I want Adina to show everything she can do. And I think it's like, obviously that's an episode that's not in the book.
Yeah.
It's just based on me and Kelly talking and some personal history stuff of mine and personal history stuff of hers kind of melding together to do this almost like one woman play.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how, it was giving Angels in America. It was giving,
yes,
although it did answer a lot of the questions that we had.
Yes, that's right.
But
that's right.
It was so interesting seeing the actors from the main arc portraying almost these other characters in her story.
That's right. Like when she sent me the script, I was amazed. But then when we started filming it, and I saw the set, and I saw all the things that we were doing, and then also Alexis as younger Lily, and Jared and everybody else, I was really like, this is whatever they call it, peak TV, golden TV. This is it. And then, quite frankly, and the fact that, and it's Adina, who is the center of that, is also a thing you don't get to see, like that prestige TV.
You don't.
Doing that, centering a woman like Adina and her whole story in that episode. I was like, Kelly, whatever happens after this, we did something.
What did this episode reflect in your own life?
The story is so much about Apollo and his generational trauma, and Emma and her generational trauma. But one of the things that, of course, all of us have to reckon with is, okay, I went through something, but the people before me went through their own thing. And so I guess all I would say is, my mother is an immigrant from Uganda who came to the U.S. and raised me and my sister here. And it was not easy for her. Getting here, surviving here, and doing that work without a good partner. So those were the things that were pouring in from my side. And it was really what I loved when Kelly said, like, I want to show how much Lillian has, like, just her strength, like on some level. Certainly Apollo is our main character, and this is about the strength of a new father and a loving Black father and all that. And then what we're adding in is Emma and her strength, even when her own husband doesn't believe her, right? And the unbelievable strength she displays, and her faith that her baby's alive and I'm going to find him no matter what I have to do. And then her point was like, but I want to say, it's not like these two are magical only. What Lillian came through to get here and what she did to survive maybe even outdoes Apollo and Emma, right? And in that way, the hopeful implication was that sense of like, everybody's working through these things, and some people are able to find a way to make something good out of a lot of bad.
Yeah.
And then, as we see with some other characters, like say William, some people just go bad.
Yeah.
Like if we get season 2, I'm telling you right now, what William has been up to is so much worse than anyone thinks, and I really want to put it on screen. Well, I really want it to be that funny. Level of horror.
That is the one thing that really surprised me. Episode 7, I thought it was amazing, and then I was like, wait a minute, they got a lot to wrap up if they're trying to do the book in one episode. And I'm scrolling forward, I'm like, no, the episode's only 45 minutes. I don't know how they're gonna get all this done. And I was like, oh, so you all really bet the farm on a season 2, because
we did.
If you have read the book, you're going to see flashes of things that happen towards the end of the book. But if you haven't read the book, it might be a little confusing. I commend you for taking that leap, because I think so much of sci-fi right now, especially science fiction and horror that have predominantly Black and BIPOC casts, you always can tell that the season finale gets everything wrapped up very, very fast, because they don't know if they're going to get a next season. When did you make that decision, and did Apple fight you on that?
Kelly made that decision. So we had 8 episodes, and her point, almost from the beginning, was we could just do the book in 8 and try to just end it at that, but then you don't have room for Emma and her story. You don't have room for that Lillian standalone episode, which she knew early on, I want something for her. Whether or not it was exactly what it ended up as, that took time to get to. And her, I think, like throughout the process, one of the things that I also have learned from her was like to, as this old cliche goes, act as if.
Yeah.
Act as if you are getting 2 seasons to tell this whole thing. And because what would be so much worse, I think, would be if people watch it and they were like, oh, there was so much potential there, but they kind of rushed.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, because you only get one shot at it.
I remember really thinking that about Lovecraft Country. I'm like, oh, no,
Yes.
rush through this. There's things I want to see
There's
here.
so much here, yes. And to have the confidence that we could, like, that's why, I mean, certainly for all the ways I loved Lovecraft Country, in particular, my favorite was the mom's episode.
Yeah. Oh my
right?
gosh,
Because
yes.
It's
When she named
cosmic.
herself. Yes.
It's all that, but it was a whole episode, really.
Yes.
At least as I recall
It was.
And you need that time to live with a character and to see a journey with that character. So the idea of saying we're going to just cram a 400-page book along with more for 2 of these characters, let alone, if we can find space for, does Patrice get and Dana get more? Does William get more? So Kelly was basically like, this is how we're telling the story. And what we hope is that people like it enough and Apple likes it enough that they say, we want you to tell the whole thing. But no matter what, nobody will say we made an unambitious, bogus.
No, they can't say that. Was it fun for you?
All of this was, I mean, I got to say, like, so part of the other thing that was a blast about this was, so the original deal we had, when I optioned the book, I got a co-executive producer credit, which was just in name only kind of thing, which was great to get. And it would have meant a little money every episode, blah, blah, blah. But Kelly basically said, I want Victor a lot more involved. And so through negotiations, I became an executive producer. And so what that meant was we shot in New York for 5 weeks. I was on set almost every day. And I was talking with folks. I was talking with the cast to a degree if Kelly needed me to sort of explain a thing or anything like that, but even more talking to all the people behind the cameras, right? And getting to know them and everything. And then me and the family moved up to Toronto for the summer. And I was on set every single day except for when we got COVID.
I think we talked to you from Toronto.
Yes. To say that that it was a golden ticket level, it was beyond that, because I got to be a central part of this experience.
I could talk to you about this forever, right? But I'm going to ask that anybody listening or watching, please give it a watch and see if we can get a season 2, because I think so many more of these questions will be answered. And I also, knowing what I know about the book, I cannot wait to you explain some of those last images that we see, because I'm like, wait till they find out
what all this is.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're not ready.
Yes. I really, like, selfishly, I want to make the show because I want the show the second season because I want it to exist. But even more, it's because I feel like one of the joys has been people just saying, I have not been able to predict where this is going. And me just the whole time thinking, and you don't even know where season two is going to be even more wild.
Again, I could talk to you about this show forever and your work.
And I appreciate that.
I'm such a huge fan. But please tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me, really, the only place really is Twitter. It's at Victor Lavalle. And so for as long as it's there, I'm at Victor Lavalle.
So thank you so much for joining me. And I really, really cannot wait till we get a second season of The Changeling.
Karama, thank you. This has been a blast.